All right, I guess we'll just start from the start. How'd you get into law?
Yeah, so I suppose I had a somewhat less than conventional road into law. Not in so much as I had a number of different careers or anything before I did law. I went straight from high school to university, but essentially I started studying law just because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I finished school. I remember looking at sort of some of the courses I thought I could get into with my OP score and or what it was projected to be. And I sort of saw law there as an opportunity. Thought to myself that it would be a good degree to have that would allow me to maybe pivot into different jobs and different industries rather than just straight legal practice. So I originally jumped into law because of that. Thought that it would be a good way to be able to, be employable in a range of different jobs. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it. Even throughout university, I had no desire to practice law, really until I did my PLT. And even through my PLT, I wasn't overly keen on the idea of being in private practice until I did my placement. And yeah, as soon as I started doing it, decided that that was what I wanted to do long term.
So I had no interest in it at school or anything, didn't take it for a subject, no?
I did legal studies as a subject and I quite enjoyed it. I found it very interesting. But no, I never really saw it as a long-term career. I suppose I was in the position that a lot of people are in when they finish school, where they really have no idea what they want to do. I had absolutely no clue. Didn't feel a strong pull one way or another. Just sort of knew that I wanted to get some kind of qualification behind me and go from there. And yeah, just kind of fell into law like that.
Oh, yeah. So since being admitted, how has your journey kind of taken place?
Yeah, so I was admitted back in 2015, so going on 5 years ago now. I did my PLT placement with a firm in Paddington in Brisbane, which had a bit of a generalist practice where I was able to do a number of different areas of law. Um, from the outset, I was kind of drawn to the areas of criminal and family law. I really enjoyed those. But I was able in that placement to get a lot of experience doing a lot of other things such as residential and commercial conveyancing, which really helped me because where I sort of went after I was admitted was to a general practice firm in the city, and most of my work early on was doing residential and commercial conveyancing. Um, it's sort of, I suppose, as you know, an area that a lot of small firms do a lot of practice in. So I did that for about a year, and then after that, the firm I was at decided they wanted to practice a bit more in family law. So I started to take on a bit more of a caseload in family law. It's a bit of an interesting situation. I was at a firm where they didn't really have that kind of guidance and structure in the area of family law. So I was kind of left to figure things out on my own a lot, as a lot of people are in small firms. I was at that firm for about 3 years. Towards the end, I started to do a bit of criminal law too, which I really enjoyed. I was fortunate enough to work on some pretty interesting matters. You may have heard about during the Commonwealth Games, the Indian quote unquote journalists who were smuggled into the country who were actually farmers. I was actually able to do some work on that matter, and do a few other pretty interesting criminal law matters. So I got pretty interested in that area of law as well. I finished up at that firm. I went to another firm for about 6 months, which was based in Spring Hill, where I was doing essentially just family law, day to day, mostly litigation work. And then from there, I moved to my current role and have really been focusing mostly on family law with a bit of criminal law now, in this job for about a year. So, yeah, been practiced for about 5 years, done a bit of family law, a bit of criminal law. Yeah, it's been good.
So what is it most about family law that's drawn you to it, I guess?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if you'd ask a lot of lawyers, they'd say that it's not exactly a desirable area of law
Yeah.
to practice in. You have to be a special breed, I think, to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I think what sort of draws me to it is the fact that it's very hands-on and you're dealing with very real issues and matters. It's not, and I say this with the utmost respect, obviously, to people who practice in commercial law or large-scale litigation. You're not as detached from the clients and from the matters, I believe, as you are in those areas with family law. You get to be a bit more hands-on, a bit of for lack of a better term, you're dealing with real people and real issues. And yeah, I'm not sure. It's just grabbed me early on, and been doing it ever since.
And how did you find the transition from going to a student to being admitted and being a lawyer and having to actually deal with the clients?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. There's definitely a very tough transition when you move from being a student to being in practice. I think the thing that I found out very quickly, which I think a lot of people find out very quickly, is how little you actually know when you take that first step into practice and start dealing with real issues and just the day-to-day of practice. It's definitely a tricky transition, and I think if I could say sort of the trickiest part of it, I think was, like you said, dealing with clients and having that personal responsibility for real issues. It's very different when your matters aren't just hypotheticals and they're actual real people with real consequences. But yeah, I mean, I didn't struggle too much with the transition. I found it relatively smooth. I know certainly some people find some real growing pains, but I think the great thing about law is that it's a very collegial profession, and as long as you've got those support networks there with you, and you've got the right people not only internally in your firm but professional mentors, and you're typically able to overcome that sort of transition.
Oh, that's good. Well, speaking of struggles, is there anything how particularly you struggled with at the start that someone else might go through?
In terms of particular struggles, I suppose the biggest struggle is that it is something very different to when you're at university. It goes without saying, but the workload is far greater when you're in practice. You might have an assignment at university, which is draft a letter of advice on a matter, and when you're in practice, that's your Tuesday afternoon. The workload's a lot higher. Juggling all the different expectations is very, very difficult. Certainly not only internal with your firm and dealing with, whether it be partners breathing down your neck, or supervising solicitors demanding a lot of you and expecting a lot of you, but also the pressure you face from clients, I think is something that I found I wasn't really prepared for. I was certainly ready for the large workloads and the pressures that would come from supervising solicitors, but I wasn't really prepared for that kind of pressure that you face externally from clients. It's very easy, I think, to forget that when you're in practice, you might have 20, 30 matters on the go at once. For the people who you're representing, that's their one matter. That's all that matters in the world to them, and there's a lot of demand that they place upon you. That was definitely a struggle, but I think that's the kind of thing that everyone struggles with when they first start practicing, and you sort of, throughout your time in practice, you develop mechanisms to allow you to deal with that.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest thing I would assume dealing with the clients. I suppose, would you get many calls after hours and whatnot with family law stuff, or not so much?
Oh, absolutely. After hours, particularly around Christmas time, I find I get hammered with there was an issue with the changeover of the children, and he's not letting me see my kids at Christmas, or she didn't do this, and it's obviously a highly emotional time for clients, and that's probably the time of year where you get hammered the most. But yeah, I mean, with the family, with the criminal, even back when I was doing the just the property conveyancing work, I was getting a lot of calls after hours. A lot of people would email you at, say, 4:50 and be ropeable if they didn't hear from you by 6 a.m. the next day, but you get better at managing those sort of expectations. I think the key to that is typically just to be upfront with your clients, set very clear boundaries early on and make sure you stick to them.
Alrighty. And probably just wrap it up there. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, that's right.
Any advice you'd want to give to someone who's looking at taking a legal career?
Yeah, I suggest my advice would be a few bits of advice. I guess jump into it. Don't be hesitant, and I guess withdrawn early in your career. If it is something you want to do, really do dive into it. Find some mentors. I found that was a very big thing that assisted me in my early career was not only people within my firm but other colleagues outside who you might just meet in matters, you might meet them at networking events, however, but being able to build those relationships and really lean on those is very, very helpful. In terms of sort of your practice, I'd suggest, and this is simply my opinion and what I've found in practice, look at specializing relatively early on. Find something it is that you want to do, dive headfirst into it. Um, I find in my personal practice and dealing with other solicitors, the solicitors who are very general and have general practices may not be as across some matters or may simply not be as in tune to what's going on in that particular field simply because they've got their hands in a lot of different fields. But I think it's something that will really benefit you and your clients if you can really specialize and dive headfirst into one area of law and really master it.
And in saying that, in your
Mm.
5 years of admission, do you feel like it's leading away from generalist law firms and more specific specialists kind of thing? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I found it already in my career. I started, like I said, I started out in some generalist firms and were able to do a few different areas of law. But as my career's gone on, I really honed in on the area of family law. I'm actually currently doing a master's in applied law, majoring in family law at the College of Law, which I found has been fantastic. But yeah, as my career goes on, I think I would expect that it will really wind up with probably just a sole family law practice.
sorry, do you plan on doing like mediator course or any sort of that sort of pathway, or just
Yeah,
stick with the family law kind of thing?
yeah. I mean, mediator accreditation as a mediator would obviously be something I'd look at in the future. Potentially undertaking the training to become an independent children's lawyer would be something that I'd be looking at doing in the long term. But that's me. I'm always keen to keep upskilling and keep learning. I even recently did my practice management course. I'm not going to be starting a law firm tomorrow, but you pick up a lot of skills which can help in your day-to-day practice. So yeah, I think as I go on and I sort of hone in on that family law, the ongoing training that I do will definitely be more specialized in that area. Yeah,
Alrighty, cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. I think that's pretty much everything I
absolutely.
need.